In 2022, a pair of former ball players and a talented young broadcaster were tasked with creating a college football podcast. These men promptly escaped into the mountains of West Virginia and got to work. If you want top-level football analysis, off-topic stories, and locker room humor, you're in the right place. You are In the Gun.
In the Gun, episode number 61. It's time to talk about some of Big O's teammates from his high school, his collegiate, and his professional career. We're going to talk coolest teammates, all right? Not favorite, not the best, but just coolest. Guys who just walked into the room and commanded attention, guys who had that moxie, guys who were funny, who had a gravitating personality, right? We'll get to all of that in just a moment. It'll be the Big O episode here on ITG, but I am Wesley Euler with the best teammates in the business, the runaway beer truck himself, Owen Schmitt, down the sideline, and the signal caller, Jed Drenning. In this episode of ITG, as always, brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. You can get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games, also available to play right on your phone. So head to the website or use your mobile device today to sign up and get in on the action. And make sure you use the promo code BELIEVE when you sign up for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV at BetOnline, where the game starts. And, you know, it's fitting that this is the Big O episode here. I tell you what, look at this backdrop. If you're watching on YouTube, look at this backdrop that Big O has behind him. He looks like a professor about to give a lecture here. I love it, Big O.
Live from the storage unit in Raynell, West Virginia.
It does.
Actually, I think he's pulling his leg.
Dog. This ain't a damn storage unit, Jed. Come on now.
He is very gullible. Before we started recording here, we were all like, "Owen, where are you? That looks really nice." He was like, "Oh, I'm in a storage unit. I set it up." You sandbagging son of a gun, you Big O. I tell you what, we're gonna get to Big O's storage unit memories and all these different things here. But first, a couple headlines, as always, to get us started. Jed, Pac-12 Media Days coming up here at the end of the week. And what the heck is going on with this media deal for the Pac-12, or maybe a lack thereof is the better way to put it?
Let's pivot real quick, and you can explain this better than me, Wes, but at the top of the show is probably the best time to mention we're trying to drive as many people to believe.com, right?
Good call.
Okay, so let's hit that road. Again, you can explain that better than I can. But
yes, so essentially we, this past year or so that we've been doing this podcast, our production stuff has been all over the place. We used to have someone who helped us. He is no longer with us. We've got Skylar in the fold, of course, who you all met last week, who we're really excited to be working with. But due to some of the confusion over the past year and the relationship that we had with Believe and some of the stuff that was set up for us by our former producer, we discovered this past week that we actually have two different podcast feeds. So they're both the same. So wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, if you put in the Gun podcast, there's actually two different feeds. One of those is the one that our old producer created. The other one is the Believe feed that has a picture of Owen hurdling the Rutgers player as the icon. Now, here's our predicament, is that we would like to navigate everything over to Believe because they're a network that we're a part of, and they've got a big distribution network and resources and all those different things. Mm-hmm. But we've got like 100 times more downloads. Okay, maybe that's a little dramatic. We've got like 50 times more downloads on our other feed as opposed to the Believe feed. So we're going to grandfather this thing in. We're going to continue to upload into both here for a little while until we get everybody on the same page. But if you are subscribed to the In the Gun feed that has our ITG logo, eventually, again, not right away, but eventually that one is going to stop being updated. You need to subscribe to the In the Gun podcast feed that has Owen hurtling over that poor soul from Rutgers. Yes. Now, if you just watch us on YouTube,
unaffected.
You're unaffected by all this. That's the good news. And so maybe you should, all just start subscribing and watching us on YouTube, and then we won't have to worry as much. But we apologize for the confusion. Like I said, we're going to grandfather this thing in. We're not pulling the rug out from anybody's feet or anything like that right away. But we discovered this past week in some back and forth and some confusion with our producers on the Believe side of things that we actually have 2 different podcast feeds. Same episodes, same content, all that. But make sure you're doing us a favor and subscribing to the correct feed, which is, again, the one that has the picture of Owen hurdling the Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. In other words, we can't tell you how much you're expressing enough, how much we appreciate the support, because in these other platforms, whether it's Apple or Spotify, we've had tens and tens and tens and of thousands of downloads. So now what we're trying to do is channel or funnel those. It's just as easy to find. It's not going to be more difficult to find. It's just as Wes touched on, when you do your search, go to the Believe version of it, because right now there's going to be both versions available, because we don't want to just have everybody hit a brick wall and wonder where we went. So we're trying to get and spread the word, migrate away from whatever you might currently be using toward the Believe one with the logo that Wes said has Owen jumping over the Rutgers guy. Both say In the Gun, but only one has Owen jumping like that. So move toward that one at Believe, BLEAV. And
we'll just, again, if you just put In the Gun in your search bar, it'll be there. Yeah, it's
okay,
just
so
yep.
Now that we
and like we said,
behind us,
please we're gonna grandfather this in for you. The second feed won't go away anytime soon. We'll keep it up here into the season and make sure everybody has time, and we'll continue to kind of make sure we say this briefly in every episode. But again, if you're watching on YouTube, if you like to see our beautiful mugs in a visual format and all the graphics and stuff that Jed produces during the season for our previews, and the great graphics that Skylar's producing for us as well too, on YouTube, In the Gun podcast, just subscribe there, and everything is going to be all gravy, baby. Now, Jed, real quick, before we get into the Pac-12 media deal, another thank you to our friends at Toothman Ford. Of course, folks, we all know cars cost less in Grafton. Make sure you're getting your butts to Grafton for all your vehicle needs. There you go, supporting those who support Mountaineer Athletics.
Literally, there's so much inventory. I stopped at CJR. I couldn't find a place to park because it's swelling with inventory. But I texted JR. Of course, he's out and about running a basketball camp. I mean, I'm telling you right now, there's 1,000 reasons to buy your cars at Toothman Ford. And many people have posted just because of how good Toothman Ford is in this new landscape of NIL to WVU sports. But J.R. Toothman's a great dude. He's got a great staff, but not just that, because he's my buddy, because he's our boy, because he's so good to WVU, but they truly do have a ton of things to choose from in that lot. But I'm glad you pointed that out, Wes. Yeah, I was just about noon today. I was out that way. But as far as the Pac-12, their media day,
what's going on there?
And we were alluding to, among others, Brett McMurphy tweeted out. It sounds, because we asked last week when we were talking to Skylar, is there a possibility that the commissioner of the Pac-12, George Kliavkoff, can actually step to the podium to start Pac-12 media days at the end of the week and still not have a media rights deal? Well, it's looking more and more like that is going to be the case. Yeah. Brett McMurphy tweets, no coach or Amazon Prime, because Deion's not going to be there either. He's having issues with that fallout from that foot surgery he's had. And thoughts with that poor guy, with what he's dealing with there. Say what you want about Deion, but let's get his health right so he can get back on the sidelines. At Pac-12 Media Day, Colorado's Deion Sanders won't attend while recovering from Pac-12 surgery and won't announce. And the Pac-12 won't announce a new media rights deal on Friday. So two of the big things they thought were going to provide some sizzle to that steak. First, sure. Deion being around. He's not going to be in-house. So, and then they were hoping, at least from the outside looking in, to have some sort of deal to announce. And that, it appears from all sources, maybe they'll surprise everybody, but it appears that that's not going to be the case at media days, at least. Now, of course, the company line will be from the Pac-12 saying, well, in the 11th hour, there have been other interested parties and it's going to take more time and things are looking good. Right. Believe what you want to believe, but I don't see it as a positive. that they're going to, at least it appears, go through media days without being able to announce some sort of media rights deal with the instability created about a year ago this time with the announced departure of USC and UCLA following this year. So where does this go from here? We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a lack of pop. No TV deal, no Dion, Prime, Sanders. They're obviously, I think, all due respect to Lincoln Riley, who's a huge national name as well too. I mean, Dion is their biggest draw, clearly from a coaching standpoint. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see some of the messaging, the narrative that they try and spin out of all of that, and maybe shuffling some chairs on the Titanic there as well too, as everything starts to go down. And just keep playing the violin and the cello as the Titanic sinks. Nothing to look at here. Finally, for our headlines here as well too, guys, before we get into Big O's coolest teammates, Jed, Pro Football Focus's all preseason Big 12 team came out, and there were a few Mountaineers represented on the offensive side, one Mountaineer on the defensive side. And I just want to be transparent with this. I like Pro Football Focus when they put out numbers and statistics that back up what I think. I dislike them all other times. So this is one of the times actually that we're picking up what they're putting down. What did PFF have to say with their preseason all Big 12 team and the Mountaineers in there as well too?
Well, first let's establish the difference between what PFF's all about and putting their team together versus maybe some of the other media outlets. It's not a popularity contest. Okay. Say what you like about PFF. Some people come just short of swearing by it. Some people aren't big fans of it in the coaching community, but I tell you what, they've worked their way, guys, into appearing on a lot of scouting reports internally throughout the country. In other words, sometimes you'll have programs at least take a peek at what the PFF ranking for a certain player might be and include that in the data sets that they provide for their players, among many other things. But so that kind of tells you how far PFF has come. I mean, yeah, they have a full-time job of sitting around and breaking down tape and evaluating, and it's much more detailed than maybe some of the other metrics that you're looking at from a consumption standpoint. But there's a subscription service to it. Of course, I subscribe to it just like anything else. I can't get enough of this information. So I like to kind of compare their notes with what they're seeing, with what I'm seeing on tape. But it's a good thing when you have, offensively for starters, 3/5 of the Pro Football Focus offensive line preseason team are Mountaineers, and not just Mountaineers, homegrown Mountaineers.
Yeah.
The suspects that you would imagine, starting with Zach Frazier at center, Doug Nestor, and Wyatt Milam. So the three of them, again, there's only 5 throughout 14 teams in the Big 12. There are only 5 offensive linemen listed. Okay. Now, real quick, do the math. 14 times 5 is what? All right. You're looking at 70 possibilities. Okay. That can land in these final 5. We have 3 of those 5. So we understand that the offensive line could potentially be a building block for this team. This is just a little bit more evidence in the form of exhibit A, B, or C as to why we believe that. Again, this is tape evaluation. This isn't just, hey, that guy, I'm a sports writer and I think he played really well, so I'm going to vote for him. That's not what this is. This is more about tape evaluation and analytics and metrics and driven that way. So I think no matter how you stack it, it's good news. So on the offensive side, 3/5 of the O-line. And on the defensive side, all off season, PFF has given Aubrey Burks a lot of love. He's one of the higher rated returning safeties in the league. So it's not a surprise by virtue of that to find Aubrey on this preseason team. And I'll tell you what, as somebody who's going to be playing center field and trying to help us keep a lid on things after how leaky we were last year in terms of allowing big plays, I think that's another promising sign on the defensive side that Aubrey's there. But I like what I'm seeing with these PFF numbers, and you're going to see Penn State's offensive line, and we'll talk about the defensive line, ranked among the best in the nation, and we'll talk about that more as we get into August and approach that game. But you talk about a clash of the Titans, our O-line against Penn State's D-line right out of the gates, Owen. Again, this team has potential, and I can find a path to where this offense can be a high-end offense. But I can't find a path to that without this offensive line being just absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, I actually was at the Josue golf tournament here over the weekend. Got an opportunity to run into Zach, and probably rambled on a little too long. Had a couple brewskis, brouhahas, brewski lows, and just basically said, "Hey, man, when you guys decide to be the team, you'll be the team." So it's really, what kind of dog are you going to come into the fight with, right? Are you going to be that guy? Are you going to be the wolf amongst dogs? Or are you going to be the puppy amongst St. Bernards? You know what I mean? So I think we have the opportunity. We have some of the players, but what team's going to show up?
Yep, good way of putting it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And while, this is one of those things too, while we know these guys all have talent, while they have pedigree, we've talked about Zach has the opportunity. Listen, it's really hard to be drafted in the first round as a center in the NFL, but he's got an opportunity to be an early day 2 guy, I think, in the NFL draft. But a lot of times too, I think we can fall in love, sports fans in general, with experience. But experience means nothing if, like Owen said, if you don't go out there and put it all together and be that team. You want to have the experienced offensive line. We do have the experienced offensive line. Now let's have that be the reason that we go out there and win some games here going forward. And I think you're absolutely right, Jed. Penn State is nasty in the trenches on both sides of the football. They're going to have a couple first-round picks in the trenches on both sides of the football, 10 months from now at the next NFL draft. If you can start at a high note there, that might be the best group you see all season, and then you can really take off. I think that's a hope for all of us here as we get closer and closer to that September 2nd date out there in prime time in Happy Valley. If you are traveling, go ahead.
Yes, not to cut you off, but our
you're good.
strength of schedule is very heavy up front, and then we kind of, not saying it gets easy, but if we can weather that storm, like you were saying, we have a good opportunity to end this thing off pretty stout.
Yep.
I think you're absolutely right. If you can find that rhythm and that momentum and that chemistry early, you got a real opportunity to make some hay down the stretch. I think that's a great call.
First 5 games, you come out slugging and you find a way to make some hay. You're going to be a massive underdog under the lights at Penn State, 17, 18 points. That line will probably shrink as the game approaches, but still a very heavy underdog. We're going to have to, if we have any chance to win that game, we'll literally, and this is something we'll talk about later, have to do something West Virginia football since 1891 has never one time done. And that is beat a team on the road in a true road game, not a bowl game, ranked higher than number 9, because Penn State, by any measures, probably 6, 7 in most of these polls. We've never in our history done that. Then you're going to have to beat Pitt at home to avenge that loss last year. Then you got a very talented Texas Tech team coming to town that is getting a lot of buzz and a lot of love. They were one of the darlings of the offseason. And then,
they've beat you 4 straight years.
Championship 48-10 last year. And then after that, a TCU team that just happened to play in the national championship last year. Throw Duquesne in, there's your first 5 games. So to Owen's point, you come out swinging and then come up for air after week 5 and see where you're at. And if you survive that, things could get interesting.
Yes, they could. They certainly could. We'll all have our eyes, of course, 7:30 prime time, September 2nd, against those Penn State Nittany Lions and that talented group that will be preseason top 10, as Jed said. If you're traveling to Happy Valley over Labor Day weekend, hey, make sure you're fueling up at GoMart, signing up for your GoMart rewards. They're here to keep you going throughout the Mountain State and onward. Slap a couple Flying Dub V magnets on your car, fill up at GoMart, and get your beef jerky like Jed likes to do, right? Pick up some cold ones and throw them in the cooler. And head up there to Happy Valley and make some noise. And remember, we've been spreading the word on this for a while. We need to get back on. Wear gold if you're going to that game, all right? Because they're going to be all in their, they're going to be in their white with the blue stripe down the middle. Great. All right. So you want to stand out. Last year against Pitt, it was tough because the colors are so similar.
Yeah.
This year, don't wear navy blue. All right. And especially, listen, a lot of our older fans listening to this podcast, I know you guys don't like the gold. You like the traditional blue. I get it. I'm kind of with you, but not for this game. Wear your gold, t-shirt, hat, whatever you end up wearing, as we will hopefully make some noise out there in Happy Valley in what is as someone who's been there twice when they've played Ohio State in the past, truly one of the great college football environments, particularly an opening season game, an old school throwback rivalry, and a fan base that is expecting a top 10 type season, a potential Big Ten championship season from their Nittany Lions. It's going to be very exciting, and we will dive into that obviously much more as we roll along here. But now it is time for the soup du jour, the dish du jour. And that, of course, is, we've teased before that we had some goofy off-season topics that we're going to, kick around at some point, because let's face it, this is the quietest time. Football never really goes quiet or goes away, but this is the quietest time of the football calendar. I think one of those things is Big Owen Schmitt's coolest teammates. Now, again, I prefaced this earlier, but that was about 15 minutes ago. I want to bring this up again. This is not Owen's best friends. This is not the greatest guys I ever met. This is not the best football players. These are just, the fawns, right? Dudes that would just walk in the locker room and hit the jukebox and snap their fingers and start dancing, right? Coolest teammates that Owen ever had. All right, Jed, you and I have our 5, and we're not doing this in any particular order, all right? Because we don't want to put anybody on the spot. Yeah. We don't want any of Owen's old buddies to listen to this and say, "Hey, well, you had me 4 and you had him 3. What the heck, man?" So Jed, you and I first will give our 5 guesses, okay? And
Yes.
And just a quick explanation of maybe why we think this person is on there. Can I start us off here and say
Please.
that you and I both think Jason Kelce is going to be in Owen's top 5?
Yeah, I think that, just as guys who know Owen, I'd be surprised if there's a couple. We'll start with Kelce, but I do think Jason Kelce, who, if I'm not mistaken, Owen, you only played actually technically 1 year with him, his rookie year in Philly.
Yeah.
But you've maintained a relationship with him and the Kelce family ever since. You went to a Super Bowl with them. So, yes, I would agree. I'd be very surprised if Jason Kelce is not among one of your 5 coolest. Final answer.
I think we both had that one intact here. I've got 3 NFL players, 3 of his NFL teammates, and 2 of his Mountaineer teammates.
Wow,
What's your breakdown there, Jedgar?
Well, I'm kind of NFL heavy too, and I wanted to go on the college route instead of the ones that you might expect. I wanted to go for a couple long shots, dark horses.
Okay,
right?
I like that. I like that.
Matter of fact.
Go ahead, throw one out there. Go for it.
Let me reach for one now. Again, this is a guy. He was a popular kid within the program, but it wasn't by virtue of what he did on the field. Okay, he was a head smart football guy, high football IQ kid. But he was a backup. And I'm gonna roll with it. Here's a name, Markel Harrison.
Ooh,
I think there was a lot of love for Markel Harrison, and he just seemed like one of those glue guys, in the background, right? He wasn't going to blow you away on the field. He had very limited snaps throughout his whole career, maybe one.
I like it.
But he just seemed to me, and this is from the outside looking in, okay? He seemed to me to be one of those types of guys. Now, this is I'm swinging for the fences on this one. This is a long shot, but that is a guess. Is a mark.
I like it. Okay. I like. All right, give me your other 3 that are on.
Well, your turn. Now. You go with one.
Okay.
Let's go back and forth.
I'm gonna go with Michael Vick.
Going with the Hokie. Okay.
A guy who was listen. When I'm picking a Hokie, I mean he was generational. I feel like every kid growing up in the time period, Owen's just a couple years older than I am. We're in the same relative age group. Every kid growing up in that time period, you played Madden. Michael Vick was the cheat code. For those who played GoldenEye on 64 back in the day, he was like Odd Job, right? Like you would rush to pick Odd Job in your characters when you were playing GoldenEye, just like you would rush to try and get the Falcons and be Michael Vick in Madden.
Yes.
He was a game changer. He was electric. He was one of the first dual threat quarterbacks to really bring that. And Steve Young and some other guys, but to really take it to the next level in the NFL. Michael Vick was cool, man. There's no other way to put it. So he's on my list.
That's hard to argue with. And you know what? Owen caught a touchdown pass, if I'm mistaken, from Michael Vick.
Sure did.
We had to yank that out of him one day.
Sure did.
Okay, I'm going to go. And again, it's a guy that you spent some time in Seattle with. But the dude just strikes me as swab is squared. Okay. Everything about this dude seems cool. Now, either it's all show or it's legit. And as somebody who was grinding in a locker room, in and out, you saw the best and the worst of him. I'm going to go with this guy. Of course, there's pretty boy syndrome at this position anyway. He's a receiver, but I got to go with Nate Burleson. How can Nate Burleson not be a cool daddy?
That's a good one.
He just is a Mac daddy, right? I mean,
so
maybe I'm wrong.
He was my like also receiving votes. He was my first one out. He would have been my sixth. Yep. Okay. That's a good one. That's a real good one. And he's obviously doing big things now as well too.
Yes. I mean, you just listen to 30 seconds, you feel like you're listening to Fonzie, it's
so okay, I like that. So we'll go back to me. Jason Kelsey and Mike Vick. I'll go with one of the WVU teammates that I chose here. Pat McAfee. I mean, come on. King of cool, the new king of media. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. He's on WWE at WrestleMania. He's jumping off of this and that on College Game Day into the river. He's got his own show. And again, from someone who was in college around the same relative time period as Owen Schmitt, anyone who was in Morgantown, I think from about 05 to 2010-ish, you've heard some Pat McAfee stories. You might have even seen him walk into Bent Willie's in his tie-dye t-shirt and just start buying out the place. That happened from time to time. Pat McAfee on my list for Owen's coolest teammates.
Okay, I like that we're mixing this in and out of some that we consider a little more obvious, like Nate Burleson, Pat McAfee. I'm going to bypass the other Pat because to me it almost it will just seem too obvious. I don't know how many human beings have lived in the history of humanity, but only one has won as a starter, not just 4 bowl games, but 5 when you include the Senior Bowl. But I'm not going with Pat White.
And Denard Robinson doesn't count. He was a wide receiver his senior year. Running back.
Yeah.
Whatever. Not quarterback.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to go in a different direction, back to WVU. Okay, before we bounce back to the NFL. And I know that Big O has a lot of love for this guy because Big O loves fearless. And this dude was fearless. Now, when you look at the defensive room on those teams he played with, boy, there's a lot of options there. I mean, if you look at Reed Williams, you look at Morty Ivy, you look at Jay Henry, there's so many options, okay? Scooter Berry. But I'm going to go on the back end. And when I think of this guy, I think more of a fearless return man. And I'm going to go with Vaughn Rivers. Because, Vaughn Rivers, again, just because I know Big O appreciates fearlessness, right? And when I think of Vaughn Rivers, I think fearless. He was going into the mouth of the cat to return any punt he had a chance at. He hated fair catches. He'd take the abuse. He'd take the punishment. He'd take the shots. So, again, stepping out on a bit of a limb, much like I did with Markel. But I'm going to go Vaughn Rivers as a long shot teammate at WVU.
That's a great one. I love that one. I'll take the low-hanging fruit then. I got Pat White on my list. Now he's a classic cool, right? Like he's not pull up to the party in the big flashy vehicle and step out with the trendy outfit. Pat's classic cool, under the radar, but he's like the guy. We all get to that point. Like you go to the party, you go to the nightclub, whatever, and the music's playing, the drinks are flowing, and you're having a great time, and it's awesome. But eventually the night winds down, and you don't want to hang out with your chaos agent friends anymore. You want to, sit down, have one last nightcap, maybe throw in a Chawsky, whatever the case may be, and wind the evening down with your buddy who you can just, shoot the breeze with, right? And tell funny stories of the evening and these different things and laugh about that funny thing that one guy did and laugh about that one girl who slipped and wiped out on the dance floor and your buddy getting rejected 37 times trying to get someone's phone number. Pat White's that guy to me. Classic cool, like Cadillac cool.
Well, I'm not going to dispute that. Okay. So are we down? Is this my 5th one, Wes? Right?
5th and final.
Okay. This was what made it difficult, was limiting this to 5. So we have, as you touched on, the getting votes category, obviously. Charlie Fry's getting no votes. Okay. We know Charlie Fry's not popular with with the Owen Schmitts of the world, okay, former quarterback from the MAC, who he spent some time with in the NFL. Now, when you look at the candidates, he played with a former Super Bowl MVP in Deion Branch. I'm like, are you kidding me? But still, moving past that, he played with Deshaun Jackson. Now, what's interesting there, not only did he play with Deshaun Jackson, but even back in college with the video game, you had some history with Deshaun Jackson,
Ooh, good
if I'm not
call.
mistaken. So I was very
Yeah, we were
keen
both on the
there.
cover. Yeah.
See, there you go. You were part of that shoot when you guys were both on the cover, the different versions of the cover, and you spent some time with him playing with the Eagles. So I was tempted there, but at the end of the day, the old quarterback in me said, "Hey, you got to go for a quarterback." So I moved past Darren McFadden, all right, and I was like, "All right, if I'm going to go with a quarterback, I'm not going to go with Mike Vick. Fair enough. I'm going to go with the established veteran who kind of teaches you how to be a pro." I tinkered with Hasselbeck because he strikes me as that guy. But instead of that, I ended up landing, when you were with the Raiders, you played with Carson Palmer. Now, that's kind of like playing with Carson Palmer with the Raiders is almost like being on the Tonight Show after Johnny Carson. You know what I'm saying? It's like that wasn't peak Carson Palmer, right? But still, Carson Palmer struck me as the pros pro, a guy that you could learn so much from, a master of all things.
Laid back West Coast
He
guy.
just struck me as that guy. If you're in there watching tape with him, or if you're having meetings with him, he's coaching kind of every position. And there's a certain suave element to that in and of itself. But again, maybe it's just the quarterback in me who I just, fanboy over that kind of thing. But Carson Palmer struck me as a super cool kind of dude.
I like that one. You got to get some California cool on your list. And here's mine. This is my off the wall one, Big O. All right, and I need your. If this guy's not in your top, which I mean, hey, your top five is your top five. But I need to know your thoughts on this guy at least. I'm going with Seabass, Sebastian Janikowski as my final one, and I know two kickers in my top five. If that doesn't really speak to the party boy nature of the position, right? But how many players have been in the NFL from Poland? How many dudes have been first-round picks as kickers? 17th overall. He won a national championship in college. And again, if you're somebody who's familiar with any of these things, he had a bit of a reputation as a party boy, had a couple, nothing serious, but a couple, let's say intoxication incidents out in public with the police.
You're making a case.
An incredible, if I was making a list of athletes that I would love to sit down and have a beer with, he's got to be on the list. He's just from Poland, college national champion, party boy, first round pick as a kicker, played for the Raiders in the Al Davis era still as well. My fifth and final, little off the board, but I wanted to get this one in there. Seabass, Sebastian Janikowski. All right, Owen, before you give us your five, talk to me about Seabass. Did you ever have any cold ones, any suds with the kicker from Poland?
I did not have any with Seabass, although I knew very much of the legend going into Oakland. It was actually Sean, the punter, who actually that was the guy there was a lot of OGs on that team, honestly. Seabass, him, Carson Palmer.
You did have some good vets on that roster.
McFadden and Marcel Reese. Those were guys who were kind of the same class as me, but really were established NFL players. That was a really fun team. Actually, I have a good story about Carson Palmer. They were all playing. I think we were playing blackjack on the plane back from Miami, and I ended up winning like a ton of money off those guys. So much to the point where they were like, "Yeah, you can't leave till we land, dude. Like you're on the hook till we land."
Did
but I would absolutely say that Carson was a true pro's pro.
Did they win it back? You got to finish.
Oh hell no, he didn't win it back, dude. I think I maybe lost like $100 or $200 after that. I mean, it was a lot of luck, but it was like dealer paid out, right? So I'm playing with my per diem, And I ended up winning like $4 or $5 grand on the trip back, which was like a nice little bonus check for me, honestly,
Heck yeah.
in that season. But let's I'll run you guys back. We'll just say if I had to say okay, so OGs in Seattle. Okay, you guys obviously Nate Burleson was a pros pro. He wasn't my true OG. I would have to say it would have been a shot between TJ Duckett and Julius Jones.
TJ Duckett.
Yeah, dude. And
That's a good one.
because I grew up watching those guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
State's finest. Yeah.
And he was a big back. I was coming in as a rookie, obviously, with 2 veteran running backs. Those were kind of the guys that, just I thought had the swag. You know what I mean? Trust me, there's a lot of guys on that team that had the swag. There were Lofa Tatupu. He definitely had the swag from USC. He was a beast. But I would say if I had to say either one, my pick would have been, in my eyes, TJ Duckett was the guy.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, so that's going
I
to
can
blow
see
your
that.
guys' mind a little bit.
That's a good one.
I can see that.
All right, Michigan State guy.
Yep.
Big back with Atlanta. When I was with the Eagles, absolutely, it was Michael Vick. I was so intrigued. I was actually close proximity to his locker, and I would ask questions all the time, kind of just like something, like what, in my eyes, that he has come over so much adversity through what he went through. Not only was, like Wes, you were saying, like my college roommate at River Falls, Troy Foss, and I'll never let him live this down. Dude took out a credit card just to buy his shoes. Okay, just to buy the Michael Vicks.
That's it.
Just to buy them. I mean, that's how big Michael Vick was. And then I'm like sitting next to the dude, and I'm thinking like, I just so many questions. But me myself sitting there, I'm like, all right, man, be cool, dude. Don't say anything stupid, all right?
Be cool, man. Be cool.
Be cool. Funny conversation. Michael probably never talked to me if I do say this, but I said what his magazine of choice was. It was Brazilian. He did say that that's what it was.
I love it.
Moving on. And I would say Kelsey developed. I mean, we kind of hit it off. We were both in the Big East, so we played against each other. He kind of knew my reputation. Obviously from West Virginia. But yeah, it was a brief, short moment. He was in the gang. I had a very tight knit group of guys when I was with the Eagles. Chad Hall, who's now in Buffalo, coaching wide receivers. Riley Cooper, who ended up retiring. Now he's doing all the hunting, fishing down in Florida. And then Mike Kafka, and we all know, he's going to be, somewhere as a head coach here soon in the NFL. One of the brilliant minds from Northwestern. We were kind of like a little crew. And then you got Colt Anderson, who was a hellacious special teams guy. That was kind of like, that was our little gang there for a couple of years while I was there. But man, we had a lot of fun. And those were some of the best memories from Philly was just hanging out with those guys. That's awesome. And then I'll say we transitioned to Oakland. I'd have to say, like I said, I mean, Carson was just so up there on the spectrum. He kind of basically said, I got that was the whole, I got $100 million in the bank deal. And, you know what I mean?
It's tough not to be cool and relaxed whenever you have $100 million in the bank, right?
Yeah, you know what I mean? I was like, this, obviously someone's a boss when they say that,
Right.
Completely true pro, just like you said, Jed. But yeah, McFadden and Marcel almost got arrested the first night I was there after I made the team with a story from them. We ended up they ended up going to this real high-end gentleman's club in San Fran, and I had gotten pulled over. I was following them, and I think McFadden was driving a Lexus, and Marcel was in a Porsche, and I was in this like little V-dub hatchback, and they're flying, bobbing and weaving through traffic. Obviously, I've never even been to California for very long, being on the main drag. And I end up getting pulled over by this cop, right? And I had a couple suds. We were just Mike Goodson. We were celebrating his birthday at Hooters, and I had 3 tall boys, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go down," And I'm like, "All right, yeah, let's do this." And I get pulled over. Cop comes to the passenger side window, which I thought was weird, but he, that's what he did. And he's like, "Hey, man, you're going a little fast." And I was like, "Man, I'm going to tell you straight up what's going on." I was following, I just made the Raiders, and
That's
I'm
Darren
following,
McFadden up there, dude.
I was like, I was following Darren McFadden, Marcel Reese. They're my teammates now. I was like, I couldn't keep up with them. Obviously, that's why I probably looked so erratic through traffic trying to keep up with them.
You were by yourself?
I was by myself, and I'm like thinking to myself, like, dude, I'm screwed. I'm screwed, man. And the guy was like, he let me go.
That's awesome.
Who do you think's
He
told that
let me
story
go.
more times? You or the cop?
Yeah, that's
Huh?
right.
Yeah.
What?
I
He said, "Who's told that story more?"
times
Yeah.
through the years? You or that cop?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And then what's even crazier is we went down to this, nicest. It was the most high-end bar I'd even been to in my life. Super swanky, a lot of nice girls in there, a lot of nice girls. And on the way home, I ended up taking a wrong turn and ended up driving underneath the Golden Gate Bridge into some like unauthorized area, like I'm not supposed to be there. And there just happens to be like 7 squad cars sitting there. I'm like, "Hey man, I'm not from here. I'm just trying to get back to Alameda. I made a wrong turn." He's like, "Yeah, man, you got to go back up there and get back on the bridge." And I was like, "Man, I will never take a sip of alcohol and drive a vehicle ever again, man."
Good thing those cops were California cool as well, right?
Yeah, they were cool as hell, man. I was very fortunate, and like I said, I wasn't completely destroyed or nothing. You know what I mean? But
you didn't need your name in the papers either, too. After you had just made the team,
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
See, if we were guessing, and Wes and I discussed this, if we were guessing your boys, like John Carlson for the Seahawks was your boy, right?
Yeah, if you were guessing my boys, John Carlson, me and him we were right here. We were definitely cool. Yeah. I was super bummed when I ended up getting let go. Of course, then he went to Minnesota, and we parted ways anyways with Seattle after Pete Carroll had come on and basically, ruffled up the roster to eventually, what they did. So yeah, and then in Philly, it was definitely the crew I told you guys about. Yeah. That was my squad.
That's awesome.
and then Oakland was short-lived. It was an in and out deal. But yeah, I'd say as far as the cool factor, it would have been those guys that I told you, Duckett,
Vic,
Marcel,
and Carson,
Darren,
right?
Carson. Huh?
Yeah, Duckett, Vic, and Carson for those scoring at home. We got 3 so far, right? Or we have 4?
2.
Duckett, Vic, 2. And Carson Palmer. You didn't count Carson?
Yeah, no, I got. Oh, how many people total?
So far out of your 5 have we named?
Oh yeah. So if we're just doing one, because I kind of rambled on and
no. I'm just trying to track it.
And then I'll have to
It's all
say
about you
at West
rambling on
Virginia,
21.
yeah, and then at West Virginia, I'll definitely have to say, I mean, Steve and Pat were just, they were so huge. Yeah, I can remember going to, I believe it was called Elements one night, and just leaning against the wall next to those guys.
Yeah.
And it was like they were just, swarmed.
They were large. They were larger than life. Yeah.
They were larger than life, dude. I mean, look at the stuff behind you, Wes. I mean, they were the dudes, man.
Yep, right
They
there
were
behind me on the
absolutely
magazine.
dudes.
And you know what, too, Owen? Like that was kind of they were kind of a last of a dying breed in that regard, too. Of don't get me wrong, like people are still huge on. Like Joe Burrow was still massive in Baton Rouge, right?
Yeah.
But it's different now in this social media age where everyone can follow Joe Burrow on Instagram and Twitter,
Yeah.
and they can know what he likes and what he's into and all and see what he's up to and what he's doing. Back when you were at WVU, that wasn't necessarily I mean, not everybody was walking around with smartphones and you know what I mean? And so when you actually got to be around these guys and see these guys, it was a big deal. And so you're right. I remember one time, all right, I'm going to incriminate myself here, but I'm past the statute of limitations. When I was a junior in high school, 2007, Big O, I was 16 years old. I had an older cousin that went to WVU. And him and his buddies took me out and got me into Lazy Lizard, which is now Joe Mama.
Dude, that was the spot.
For the younger crowd, that's now Joe Mama's. So I was 16 years old in the Lazy Lizard. And
yes, just to let you know, there was probably a lot of other 16-year-olds in there too.
Pat, Steve, and Noel, because that was Noel's freshman year, were all in there. And it was like, wherever they walked, it was like an orb. It was like an aura just followed them around wherever they went and all these things. And again, that still happens nowadays for sure, but not like it used to in the pre-smartphone and pre-social media days.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. It was that that's the love-hate between the social media stuff. Yeah, you could have built your brand, but there was a nostalgia tied to you that, like you said, you were just, oh my gosh, I'm seeing these guys in person. And I mean, I'm telling you, I even had those moments. And I can remember, and obviously I don't know what the girl's name was, but I remember standing next to those guys, and they were leaning against the wall. I was over there too. And I remember a girl coming up to me and being like, oh my God, is that Pat White and Steve Slayton? Are you waiting in line to get an autograph?
You're like, hey, I was on the cover of Sports Illustrated too, all right? I was that third guy on the cover.
Listen, and I legit looked at her, and I looked at her and I said, absolutely I am.
Absolutely I am. You're darn right. You got a Sharpie, by the way? I left mine back in the back of my apartment.
I forgot my pen. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, dude, like 25, 30 women, man. 25, 30 women. I mean, it was incredible. And that was a story they probably don't even remember. You know what I mean?
Sure. That was everywhere they went.
That was
funny.
Yeah, that was
There's people telling these stories about Owen.
100%.
There are absolutely 100%. People telling these stories about Owen. Matter of fact, I mean, if you're out and about with Big O anywhere, which I have been,
oh, Jed,
crazy what happens.
The Baylor and the Oklahoma games last year that Owen and I went to together. You can't walk anywhere in Morgantown with this guy because you go 10 yards. You can't
walk anywhere in Oak Hill, West Virginia.
Somebody stops him. Somebody stops
him. Freaking doctor's office into the parking lot in 3 minutes.
And you know what, too?
It's like, listen, what is this?
You want to know the most difficult part about being Owen Schmitt is like every 10 feet you walk, someone's like, here, chug this beer. Here, drink this moonshine. Owen's like, Owen's like, buddy, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. It's not 6 hours till the game. I got to pace myself a little bit here.
Oh, and Wes, I mean, hell, I was defeated, man.
He was defeated. That Baylor game.
I basically slept through the entire
Oklahoma.
Game,
I mean, the Oklahoma game.
Dude, I'm telling you, I slept.
you coached a game the night before, so you only got like 2 or 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah, it was straight to Morgantown, and it was like it was
so
on.
Owen, are there any
Jed,
folks
Owen
that
goes,
we wouldn't guess that are just, whether it was at WVU or in the NFL, that you wouldn't think outsiders would guess are just super cool or something? But
Dan Moses.
Well, I would say Mark Magro was a big.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'd say he was really an inspiration for me too, because we were obviously opposite positions, but the ones that battled together. Mark probably could have been a fullback, just like I probably could have been a linebacker.
And you were side by side on special teams sometimes with him.
Yeah, we both worked super hard. That was kind of the matchup when we did one-on-ones on board drills. We were always competing in the weight room together. It was a guy who really uplifted, my efforts and two totally different people. Mark is very strong in his faith. Great guy. And then you got me, who is, I'm the complete opposite.
Party boy. All right.
Yeah, I'm the guy who likes to live life and enjoy it, live in the moment, and that's who I am. So it was always he was my yin to the yang.
Yeah,
I like that.
We mentioned this when Rich was on the show, but unless I'm mistaken, when Phil Brady faked that punt, if you look at the 3 Mountaineers that were closest to Phil Brady, 2 of them were Owen and Magro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Weren't you guys side by side?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As personal protectors.
We were the wedge.
Yeah. In that spread punt formation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jed, that Oklahoma game, it's like 8:30 in the morning, right? Big O calls me and he goes, "Hey, I just parked. I'm walking to your tailgate now. I'll be there in 10 minutes." I go, "Sweet, awesome. Got some breakfast and some booze waiting for you." 45 minutes later, Big O calls me and he goes, "Dude, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to make it through the blue line, but I can't. I keep getting stopped."
I'm telling you,
it's like people don't understand. It's hard being popular. All right, people don't understand how hard it is being popular.
If you ask the average fan, the average Mountaineer fan, to identify the Mount Rushmore of 06, 07 players, it's not 2 guys, it's 3. Owen, you're right there.
You are. You absolutely
it's Steve,
are.
It's Pat, and it's you. And if you have to throw a 4th player in, it probably would. Noel would probably work his way in there, I would guess.
Mm-hmm.
But
I tell you what, too,
the 3 of you. It's the 3 of you as players that people identify most with and recognize as part of that team and spearheading that team. And I don't know if you can see it. It might be a forest for the trees thing. It really might. And you might look at them in reverence and say, "Hey, they were so, famous."
I definitely look at them like that. That's kind of how I always looked at them. Just not that I didn't feel like I was a part of it, but it was just in a group of the best players in the NCAA, and I was coming from a Division III school.
Yeah,
it was
your defense.
What the hell is going on right now?
In a team, Owen, that had a lot of players and a lot of personalities that stood out, those 2 stood above the rest.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So McAfee, cool or goofy? 05 to 07, McAfee, cool or goofy? 05 to 07, both.
Oh, McAfee was cool as hell back then. That's what I'm saying. Okay. It's tough to say when you say full on coolness. And you're saying the Fonz. Steve and
You're
Pat
thinking
the
Fonz. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
Steve
great.
And Pat were the Fonz.
Steve and Pat were the Fonz. They snapped and somebody came to dance with them, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, dude, they were the dudes. I mean, if I wanted to be
more soft-spoken too, right?
It was Steve Slayton or Pat White, dude.
Well,
Steve was soft-spoken, right? He was kind of the soft-spoken guy, right? Steve was. Steve.
I'd say they both weren't very, boisterous. I mean, I would say if you're comparing the 2, yeah, Steve didn't he let his emotions out some. Pat was a little more vocal with them. but it wasn't like, both those guys I thought for who they were extremely humble.
Like it didn't strike me. Steve never struck me as the type of guy who would, even on the sidelines, imitate the Panther growl at Heinz Field, like Pat, right?
Right.
Oh yeah,
Pat liked to have fun. You know what I'm
when
saying?
Pat was playing the game, he was having legit fun.
Yeah.
He was having
Well,
fun. It wasn't like,
when you're dicing everybody up, you better be
I
having
know,
fun.
dude. Like he was having fun. Like, and you know, it was such a crazy time, man. I'm telling you, you got to understand where I was coming from, and then so many events had to happen for me to even get to the playing field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had Pernell Williams and Jason Colson, who were above me for sure, because really it wasn't a fullback and a tailback type deal. It was just two tailbacks.
Single back.
It was like a heavy back and a scat back. That's kind of what it was. And then I just basically forced my way in there by learning the running back position, the fullback positions, and then just really working my tail off, man, and showing them that I could be the guy who could still make the zone reads and make the run game really tick. You know what I mean? And I'm sure Coach McGee, he had talked to me, after graduation, was like, man, I really wish we would have done more for you. Which was funny because, I was the guy who was always thanking everybody. But obviously I appreciated that. But when you got two studs and everything works with them, it's not that nobody else on the team was worth getting the ball to. We had unusually long run. Like it didn't work like that. That's not how run game works. Usually you're pounding the ball, you're pounding it.
Out, yeah.
I mean, we'd break long runs every game,
every quarter.
Yeah, like every quarter. It was not a big deal. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun, man. And those guys were great teammates. And it's great being able to chat. I've talked to Steve some a little bit and briefly with Pat. I mean, obviously Pat's he's been busy. Okay, if you haven't checked his social media out, he's got a growing family.
Yes, he does.
He has even scored two boys, 2 girls now, and Steve's had his family rolling for a while now. His son's getting and they're getting older, and it'll be fun to eventually get the 3 of us back and maybe reminisce sometime about the good old days.
Heck
Absolutely.
yeah.
I'll say this.
Owen, go ahead, and then I'll close it down.
Here's what I was going to say. Yeah. I was going to say, let's cap this off. This has been everything we thought it'd be and more. It was all about provoking stories from you. That's really what this was about. We just wanted to get you rolling with
dress
some
it up.
And that's what we wanted. And
you got to poke the bear, man.
Let's close with a speed round. All right. Very quickly. At the college level and the pro level, biggest smack talker you ever played with and against, in college, with and against, and in the NFL, with and against. Biggest smack talker.
That's a whole nother episode, Jed.
Well, we'll double back to it later, but I want to hear names.
I'd say Vaughn Rivers would talk the most smack.
Okay. And what about against in college?
Oh, man. Against, honestly,
HB Blades.
I didn't really pay much attention to any of that stuff, man. I was the guy who would smash you into the ground and just get up and walk back to the huddle. Like, I didn't even care.
NFL.
I never said a thing.
Biggest smack talker. Yeah.
Oh. I'd say Tito Spikes talked a lot of smack, man.
Yeah.
Tito Spikes talked a lot of smack. Now, guy we played with that talked a lot of smack. I know Asante Samuel's talked a lot of smack.
He still does. Yeah.
He talked a lot of smack.
Dude. You see him last week?
The biggest guy I played with that. He talked a lot of smack. I remember him giving me the nod after I jumped over that guy from the Giants, which was really cool because I felt like I was a part of the team then.
Asante did.
Yeah, I had jumped, because Leonard Weaver had blown his knee out, and then I was just on the team. Like I had made the tryout, and then you got everybody on that team made plays, dude. It was like it was crazy. We had such a load.
Deshaun,
yeah, dude, Deshaun, Jeremy Maclin, Jason Avant, Brent Selleck, Shady. Michael Vick. I mean, that was our offense.
Yeah,
like
that is crazy. That is crazy.
Marty Morningwig was the old coordinator. Yep. It was like, dude. I mean, it was crazy.
That's electric. It really is. That's an electric group. Absolutely. Well, Big O, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for letting us pick your brain and stir some of these memories. I'll say this though for you. While I think you're right here, like, Pat and Steve had the aura back. Well, you had an aura as well too, but those guys were kind of in their own stratosphere. Now, after the fact, feels like McAfee is kind of in his own stratosphere with everything that he's done in the last decade or so. But I'll tell you this right now, and this is not just me BSing you because I love you and because we're buddies now and we do this podcast and everything. If you were to poll West Virginia fans, let's say age 30 and older, right? I'm 32, about my relative age group and older. 30 and older, if you were to poll West Virginia fans and say you can meet one former Mountaineer at the Fishbowl for a beer, who is it? Buddy, I guarantee you run away with that vote like a beer truck down the sideline, all right?
It was so perfect, Owen, because you were what they weren't. You know what I mean? Like, one was the speed, one was the muscle car,
absolutely.
and you're the 18-wheeler. You know what I mean? It's like you were the perfect complement to those two, and you rounded everything out. I mean, the three of you together that was the perfect set. It was the Holy Trinity.
It's true. It's like the race car, the muscle car, and the Titanic.
The race car, the muscle car, and the 18-wheeler. I mean, that's what you were dealing with, and that's what people had to contend with and trying to stop that offense. And that you brought a dimension to it that wouldn't have existed without you. I mean, Noel was another speed car, right? But you were the muscle to that speed and finesse that made everything so explosive and difficult. And so, you're selling you're being the humble guy that you are and selling yourself short. But from the outside looking in,
well, Jed, you got me gushing over here, bud.
See, there you go. I mean, I'm telling you,
I tell you what, I haven't seen him blushing like this in a long time. I tell you.
Get away from Mountaineer Field. Mountaineer Field's one thing. I would almost expect it in those trappings, right? But we're just at 2:00 in the afternoon at a doctor's parking lot in Oak Hill, West Virginia. He's in his UPS uniform. I'm like, and you would have thought it was the middle of the third quarter of the Louisville game. It's like, what is this? It's like, anyway.
The older ladies love me, Jed.
Well, we'll spend the next episode telling all the bad stuff about you. That's what we'll balance this out.
Yeah, join us next week when Owen throws his worst and his least favorite teammates under the bus.
We're gonna revisit every turnover you ever had. I mean, we're gonna talk about all those things. Yeah, every missed block. Next week we'll talk about that.
Shoot. One final thank you before we get out of here to our friends at Fortis for roof performance and financial security guaranteed. Visit fortis.us.com. This was a lot of fun. We'll have a couple more of these goofy episodes here in the next month or so before we get to the nitty gritty, before we get to the meat and the potatoes as we inch closer and closer to September 2nd. But we hope you enjoyed this one as much as we did. Big thanks to all of our presenting sponsors and to our producer / host / everything behind the scenes, Skylar Callahan, for putting this all together as well, too. I'm Wesley Euler. For the best teammates in the business, Jed Drenning and Owen Schmitt, the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. And yes, we are asking you two things for the next couple weeks. And that is to make sure you're subscribing to the correct podcast feed as well, too. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.